what seemed to happen, since history can be fabricated by people of the past to deceive people of the future. Patrick decided to build a castle out of the historical context because of its simple aesthetic magnificence. He picked a good spot near the ancient city of Felix Pedro and permafrost-buried Neolithic mammals and the midnight sun. Frozen winter wasteland with a landscape like green West Texas hill country after 7 days of rain crossed through with razorback parallel mounted ranges within which the castle was settled. The stone of the castle was quarried from the Alaska Range toward Mount Foraker and hauled by appropriately peasant fur-dressed workmen on wooden muskox-driven sledges overland, past the ghost town coal mining camp of Ely, and across rivers and electro-mag paths to a site overlooking the Tanana Valley and the wide north. The midnight sun was visible from the heights a few miles south of the Arctic Circle. Aurora Borealis tap danced his St. Elmo's shoes across the winter sky. 10th-generation Vietnamese retainers whom he hired as serfs for tourists provided roasted husky dog meat with barbecue sauce, a la Duels, and succulent tortoise pot pie. Patrick recreated the castle at Rollicano Hill in complete period authenticity to seem like a typical pioneer castle of the time would have been if one had ever been built in the natural design of the era. Sherry and Patrick landed upon each other in the cold powder snow. "This is it, Sherry. Home," said Patrick. The castle was open for business. As in many frontiers of conflict, business continued through op-4 warriors who were near. Authentic fat men dressed as monks in black rope-belted habits walked, hands folded in front around the estate, attending business. They brewed old Alaska's finest malt beverage and ran antiquarian, book, and historical artifact shops littered around the castle with drug food concessions, mandatory, relaxed credit dominions, and guided tours of the castle, the underground, and made history of Alaska and Voevodsky enterprise speeches. The Plain of Desolation, Poker Flats, was a still-hot radioactive remnant of the post-Cold War phenomenon that flared up in the year 2030. General decay in the mass phenomenon of Lemingway brought this precursor to the chaos. Brief, tentative exchanges of subnuclear munitions escalated into an improvisational trimming with concealed suitcase nukes interests of seemingly opposing forces. Some places in diverse parts of the planet were scorched. Nothing much came of it. Tourists sojourned across the radioactive plain to observe the unusual wildlife that developed living with radioactive and genetic mutations. They stopped and shopped at Voevodsky Castle before voyages for war tourism, for staples such as beer and barbecue sauce, vital to successful weekends in the wilderness, and the inspirational literature that was sold of a spiritual nature. Walking into the castle, Sherry and Patrick greeted the tourists wandering about, crossing over the drawbridge in frozen solid ice in the moat. "This may be the last place I have on Earth, Cherry, if I can't do something to reverse the propaganda Big Com's liberally applying. My interests are disappearing like corporate's got a chimp team on it. The rats, I don't yet know how I'm going to overcome it. Maybe it can't be overcome. Perhaps we'll have to invent something else altogether." "Don't worry about it, Pat. You'll think of something. What was that about a war you were going to stop or start?" Jerry asked. "It's the one in progress I was talking about. The regional war of the Shankom Imperials with the Wang Dorsetian recurrent fascists," Patrick answered. "Why are they at war?" "You don't really mean to ask that, do you?" "Sure, you're the philosopher. I'm just asking a practical question." "They're at war because Alaska is the gateway to North America via land. Hasn't land transportation been obsolete as the main battle force for 3 centuries? "Yes." "Then why are they fighting in Alaska? Because it's a land bridge to Asia. Because it's followed Mallory up Mount Everest, Chumulunga." "I must attend to the war, Cherry. After the chaos, people have a different perspective about war. Something changed in their brains. Sun Tzu and the postmodern art of war. Chaos and conflict, perennial recurrence. They can't stop it themselves short of victory. Let me tell you about the tactics and how we can mass motion divert it away from reaching this property. The battlefront is just 100 miles west toward the Yukon Flats," Pat continued. "The fight so close is bad for ordinary tourists, good for battle tourists, but we're not in that business. That's all for the media. If it gets worse here, we'll have to return to Mars. This is the only real property I've got beside the quasi-dome and space world, everything else, the whole 3 trillion. Cherry interrupted. It's 1,100 billion. Whatever, Cherry. Everything else I've got, like everybody else, is an abstraction in corporate credit banks and corporate stocks. They can arrange loss erasure of it all if they get really nasty. And from what I've experienced so far, they are stoking public agitprop to fuel a catastrophic financial phase transition. Voevoda opened the solid, foot-thick wood door to his castle office for Cherry. They entered. What do we need to do to stop the war, Pat? The war is happening with conventional guerrilla methods, Cherry. The interior lines are held by the fascists. They stretch 300 miles from the other side of Mount Tenedos to western Alaska, the Bering Sea, and Norton Sound. The fascists have deployed 14,000 troops at various altitudes with squad munitions, air defense shoulder-fired missiles, hover jets, decoy infrared soldiers, lightweight auto-50s with 7-mile range, intellectual bullets by summer flake, and anti-armor intellectual rockets.